gentlemen, my name is Bobby Pate, and you're tuned into the I.M.A.G.E show on 89.3 KJMC, Des Moines, Iowa, the heart and soul of the city. And I am so excited, Des Moines, Iowa, to finally be on the air here in the Des Moines capital city. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Robert Pate, and I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I am the president and founder of I.M.A.G.E for Lives, the I.M.A.G.E program. I.M.A.G.E stands for Inmate Movement Against Gang Evolution. And I founded the program in prison after serving 11 consecutive years for nonviolent drug convictions, particularly that being possession with intent to deliver crack cocaine. And this journey into prison, first of all, let me just kind of give you a quick recap of my story without giving you the full script. Being from Des Moines, Iowa, I went to Johnston High School. I went there from first grade to graduation. And after high school, I was fortunate enough to receive a full ride basketball scholarship. Basketball took me all over the country, and it dropped me off right back smack in Des Moines, Iowa. Unfortunately, I did not have any self-identity or a clue as to why I went to college. I just strictly went to play basketball. Wasn't prepared for my job occupation, wasn't prepared doing any interim. You know, my goal was to make the NBA and become a basketball star, and I was on a one-track mind. Well, unfortunately for me, after college, I was not selected to play in the NBA, and I came back home to Des Moines and started selling drugs. And that ultimately landed me in prison. The evil behind the crack cocaine and the whole war on drugs, and when it came out and all the mass incarceration and time basically just sucked my whole life up. And it wasn't until I went to prison was when I finally discovered, or it wasn't until I went to prison until I discovered self-identity. I discovered who I was, who I really wanted to be. I got on my hands and knees and I asked God to change my heart, to change my mind, to change my soul. And patiently, that began to take place. So that's when I started the I.M.A.G.E program, and I.M.A.G.E stands for Inmate Movement Against Gang Evolution. It started at North Central Correctional Facility in 2016, where it is still there and recognized by the Iowa Board of Parole, and we have now started a program in Clarinda. So the good Lord has been blessing me and the I.M.A.G.E program. Des Moines, Iowa, I thank you all for the support that you have given me. And so as we continue on this journey on 89.3 KJM, I just wanted to get myself a little bit familiar with you guys, get you familiar with me. I have two wonderful guests, Kimberly Graham, a defense attorney, and I also have Travis Schilling. He is also an attorney. I felt that it was important to have these guys on the show because there are so many issues that have been involving our justice system, not only in Iowa, but all over the country. So, to get you familiar with the I.M.A.G.E show, we're going to talk about prison. We're going to talk about reentry. We're going to talk about the criminal justice system, things that go undetected in prison and court, the war on drugs, challenges that come with reentry. We all know that a change needs to be made in our country, particularly in Des Moines, Iowa's Polk County. When a person has paid their dues and has went to prison, is it fair for them to continuously to be beat down after they've served their time? That's what we're going to talk about today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is such an honor. I thank you all so much in the Des Moines, Iowa community for your support. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we will meet our guests Kimberly Graham and Travis Schilling. We'll be back after these messages. And you're tuned into 89.3 K-Jam, Soul of the City. And with us today on the show, we have Kimberly Graham and Travis Schilling. It is a pleasure to have you guys on the I.M.A.G.E show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Travis.
Really nice to have us on.
So, you guys pretty much know about me. You know my story. You know a little bit about the I.M.A.G.E program. And I think that it's important to have attorneys in here right now because there's been so much going on in our justice system. There's been so much going on in the reentry system and the criminal justice system, of course, and then things that go undetected in prison. Statistics. Kimberly Graham, I want to start off with you, being that I feel that it's very important, first of all, for our community to get engaged with your whole job, your election, your run for Polk County Attorney. I think that it's just very important for us to understand, what we're entitled to understand the statistics that are going on. For so long, the war on drugs has been defeated. For so long, the justice system has been almost an abomination in many ways, locking people up, the mass incarceration, the minorities, and the targeting that's been going on. And not only am I going to talk about this stuff, I also want to get into the changes that need to be made and how we need to go about making some of those changes. So if you'll just take off and kind of let us have it.
Sure. So one of the first things that I talk about when we're talking about our criminal justice system and the really serious and severe need for meaningful, significant, immediate reform is that the United States incarcerates more people than any other nation on the planet. And I don't mean per capita. I don't even mean like per 100,000 people. I mean in absolute terms, the United States, absolute numbers, the United States incarcerates more people than any other nation, more people than China, more people than India, more people than Russia, more people than any other nation by far. And yet we are ranked number 122nd on the list of safest nations. So we are way down the list on safety from serious and violent crime in this country. And yet we incarcerate more people than any other nation. So what that tells me is if locking up more people worked, we'd be the safest nation on earth. That would follow because we lock up far more people than any other nation on earth.
Right.
But that's not true. We're not the safest, not even close.
Not even close.
So what that tells me is that our justice system is not effective. It's not making us physically safer in our communities. And we need to have serious reform. And we need to do things like stop making our prisons our largest mental health institutions because they were never intended to be that. Stop making our prisons where we put people with addiction without giving them meaningful drug treatment or alcohol treatment, whatever their issues are. And we need to just have a really serious paradigm shift. We need to just be looking at things like drug addiction and mental health as public health issues, which is what they are, rather than just defaulting to these are issues for which people should basically be incarcerated.
That makes a lot of sense. Travis, what's your take on that?
Well, we have a problem here where we've assigned the criminal justice system to try to determine whether a person is good or bad, rather than simply for it to be a protection from someone's bad actions and a way of deterring and correcting those bad actions with a mind that that person is not wholly good or wholly bad, but you're trying to direct them into better behavior. And this is where what Kimberly said comes in, is because that's a last resort in a means of correcting behavior. We shouldn't be looking at the criminal justice system as the first thing to correct a drug problem, the first thing to correct an alcohol problem, or any other sort of social problem. We should be helping people get better so that they never get to the criminal justice system.
So we got two good different topics right here that we're talking about. One is, first of all, not even locking people up unnecessarily the way it's been going on for so long, and the way the system has caused this domino effect of inmates. And then after you've paid your dues or your consequence, after you've been to prison, then you shouldn't have to keep paying for it over and over and over and over again. I mean, if you were to break down your average typical inmate coming out of prison, they've got child support outrageously that's been accumulated and accrued. They've got supervision fees immediately, just as soon as they touch down. We haven't even talked about their kids that they may have and wanted to do something for or see, or, start to make plans. These kind of barriers that come along with coming out of prison are overwhelming. And then you talk about a car. Most people don't even have their license. They might still owe fines for that. You talk about clothing, room and board, shelter. If a person goes to the work release, then they're forced to do all those things under the Department of Corrections. If they get a straight parole, then they have to kind of fend for themselves, find support. And that's what the I.M.A.G.E program is here for. And that's the platform that I want to continue to build. Is these guys coming out of prison, they need help. They come to me and I help them as much as I can, but I'm one person. We've provided bus tokens, we've referred them to a lot of different other organizations that can help them, and that's what we continue to do. However, I think that we need something established in place more so that there can be some direct help. Immediate help, and it's not just giving somebody money. We help them. The I.M.A.G.E program, we've helped people with jobs. For those out there listening right now, if you need a job, you always know that you can reach out to me. There's a lot of jobs available. There's more jobs out there than there are people to work right now. Kimberly, now, and even Travis, one thing that I really like about you is that you are a diehard Christian attorney, and you always keep God in the front line, and that's what a lot of our communication has been about. You're a good role model figure, good mentor figure as well. Can you tell us how you think that plays a huge part in the justice system?
Well, as an attorney, you have to model the behavior that you want other people to follow. If you're an attorney and you're misbehaving, this is why there's an entire book on legal ethics. There's an entire legal ethics board. And, as attorneys, we try to police ourselves very carefully so that we're following the rules that we're trying to teach our clients to follow, and teach them how to follow them even after they've broken them. And so if you're an attorney and you're not following the rules, then it's difficult for other people to understand how they're supposed to. And you see this play out in a courtroom where you have a very formal setting, and there's a very well-known set of, you can object to this, you cannot object to that. You speak when it's your turn to speak. You give deference to the judge and respect to the court system. And you try to show that sort of organization. And that's why, as an attorney, when you come into a courtroom, you have to be very careful only to say things that are true, to try to get the truth out of the witnesses that you're...
Now, I understand what you're saying. However, most people are probably listening to this show right now saying, yeah, but that's not true. My attorney didn't do anything for me. My attorney tried to send me up the river. You take a walk into those pods in the Polk County Jail, and you've got a bunch of sad faces from people that feel like they've been done wrong. In fact, you've got more people that feel like that their attorney has done them wrong than there are that feel their attorney has done them any good.
Well, and Bobby, I'm speaking in the ideal sense of this is what your attorney ought to be doing.
Right.
I don't want to speak to things I don't have firsthand knowledge of and say this person does this or that person did that. But, there is this feeling, like you say, among the people you've talked to. And that's a problem that you have to be able to trust your attorney. If you can't trust your attorney, then the system's not working. Because it's set up for the client to be able to be candid with their attorney. That's what attorney-client privilege is about. But if you don't trust your attorney, you won't talk to them.
And what do you say about that?
I have a lot to say about this one. So, as someone who's done a lot of court-appointed work, early in my career, I did court-appointed criminal defense work, and I've done court-appointed juvenile work throughout my career and now. And to put it bluntly, when you say, here's what the state of Iowa pays an attorney to represent a person in poverty, like what the state of Iowa pays a court-appointed attorney, it may sound like a lot of money until you realize that's gross. And that out of that dollar amount per hour, that attorney has to pay their paralegal, their office rent, their malpractice insurance, their paper that they print things on, their everything, right? And their taxes.
Sure.
And their own self-employment taxes, which are super high when you're self-employed. So if you have your own business and you're doing court-appointed work, the state of Iowa pays you $63 an hour, which again, I know at first it may sound like, wow, that's a lot of money. You'd be lucky to take home $20 of that.
Wow.
After self-employment taxes, after all of your overhead, after all of that stuff. So court-appointed work does not pay enough. And I'm not going to give any defense attorney a pass. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying if an attorney doesn't do their job, that's cool, because they're not getting paid enough. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to better fund defense attorneys. And I know that we lobby to get higher court-appointed defense fees every single legislative session. And the legislator, to Travis's point, unfortunately, I think too many people serving in the legislature may be of the mindset of, well, those aren't good people anyway. Why should we pay a bunch of money to defend them, right? Which is completely wrong-headed. If our justice system is going to mean anything, then, as you said, people have to be able to trust their defense attorney, know that their defense attorney is being compensated enough. They don't have to take way too many cases in order to pay their dang student loans.
That's right.
Because law school is incredibly expensive. So on top of everything I just talked about, they're trying to pay these huge student loans they probably have, unless they came from a wealthy family, in which case they may not be doing criminal defense work. Mm-hmm. So we have, this is a multi-piece problem here. It's a multi-piece problem. But, I would encourage anybody who hears me saying this, I'm not gonna ever sugarcoat things. My clients know that. People I work with know that. But you certainly can request a different court-appointed attorney. And if you feel like your attorney isn't doing their job, do that. Anytime you can tell the judge, my attorney didn't call me back. My attorney, missed this hearing. My attorney, and I want to do this, and my attorney's telling me I got to do that. You need to speak up and tell that to the judge and get a different court-appointed attorney if the judge will give you one, because you deserve one that is going to do what they can for you.
Now, some people, they get into their court proceedings and they've fired maybe one or two attorneys already, and then the judge will no longer allow them to fire their attorney. And that happened to me. So I'm speaking from experience.
Right. It's a problem. I mean, it is absolutely a problem. And I've seen over the last several years, as more prosecutors have been elected across the nation who were former defense attorneys, I've seen more prosecutors lobbying and being outspoken advocates for getting better wages for court-appointed defense attorneys, because, as I said, we want the whole justice system to have integrity, and in order to do that, we have to be funding the defense appropriately. You got a prosecutor over here making $120,000 a year, and you got a defense attorney over here trying to just scrape their money together to pay their student loans and their overhead and everything. You know, you've got very different resources there. The state has far more resources in that case than a defense attorney is going to have, a court-appointed defense attorney.
Well, and one of the things I think that's wrong is the fact that, and this is all over the country for that matter, that they say that you're innocent until proven guilty. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're innocent until proven guilty, why are you incarcerated? Or why is it that a person would have to pay more money depending on the crime that they committed? I mean, where's the justice in that? If I'm a killer and I go out and I kill somebody and they they set my bail at $1 million and I have the money to post that bond and get out, then that makes me a free man, even though I'm being accused of murder.
Right.
Now, I guess I don't understand how this works if I'm poor and I'm indigent and I'm being accused of the exact same crime, but I don't have the money to post bail. Then now I'm incarcerated,
right,
and now I'm suffering. Mm-hmm. Well, it was money that changed that.
Correct. Yes. We have not only some of the worst, if not the worst, racial disparities in our justice system in the United States among nations in the world, but we have probably the worst income disparities. Meaning exactly what you said. If you have a lot of money, you're going to see a very different justice system than if you don't. But again, there are something that prosecutors can do about that. Now, to me, somebody should only be incarcerated, even pending trial or pending disposition of their case, if they are a danger to the community. So to your point, you know, if somebody's accused of murder, potentially if the judge is aware they have a lot of means, they could set no bond, like, if they really feel that. But what often happens though is, you got one person arrested for driving while suspended, another person arrested for driving while suspended, and a wealthy person is out in an hour or two, and the other person is sitting there for a month until the disposition of their case, losing their housing, losing their job, losing their connection with the community. That is not making our community any safer. So if it's a lower level nonviolent offense, and if, for example, if I end up becoming a county attorney and I look at this person's record and their ties to the community and the whole totality of the circumstances, and I say this was a nonviolent offense, I don't feel this person is a physical risk, a violent risk to our community, my office will not be requesting bail. They'll be requesting that person be released on their own recognizance, that they need to show up. And in places where they do that, you might say, well, hey, then nobody shows up. No, they actually do. I mean, there's plenty of statistics from jurisdictions where they have stopped requesting cash bail for low-level nonviolent offenses, and people show up for their hearings,
sure,
just about the same rate that they show up whether they had to bond out or they didn't have to bond out.
Now, Kimberly and Travis, this may be a little off topic, but I've always said, in order to find out where we're going, we got to first understand where we've been. Mm-hmm. Okay? We look at policing, as part of that justice system, because it's the police that actually do the work, the field work, and then a person becomes either charged or not. But if they are charged, depending on what it is, they're incarcerated. When we look at the policing and the history of it, and I've started a study on this, and I'm not quite finished, but we look at where policing comes from and the facts that it started out as slave catching.
Indeed.
That the police started out as slave catchers. Yep. And most of us are not educated on this topic. And so, but it's one that I want to get a little bit more knowledge on before I really get too far in depth in. But, it's kind of hard to say, okay, there's no more police. We need police right now in our government system. We need to be able to protect the public. And by the way, I'm not for defunding police. I think that we need our police. We just need them to do their job and to do it right without targeting and being biased and racist and all of that. Right. So, I I stick up for the fact that we have to have our society protected. But if you're going to go back to the police and the slave catching, you have to look and say, okay, well, this was intended for that. Now they're locking white people up, for that matter. If you look in the federal system, there's a lot of people still getting life sentences. They're still getting hammered with big sentences, big numbers. And, I think that a lot of that has to do with how the whole police even started. I mean, you got to think, if you get a team of racist cops, or I'll just say biased cops in, say, the state of Iowa, where it's predominantly white, okay? Most of your groups and your narcotics officers, they're going to all be of the same color, which is white, right? Normally. Not necessarily, especially now we've got more minorities in these type of groups now. But I think for so long, it's been the whole good old boy, kind of redneck clique, and that have had the power. And especially when you're dealing with like crack cocaine, the war on drugs, and the whole, epidemic back when, my incarceration started. I mean, it was a nightmare that I actually witnessed. I felt like I was living in the slavery days when I was going through my whole court proceeding. It was bad news after bad news. It was, no, you can't do this. No, that's not going to work. Everything was no, shut down, denied. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was wrong.
Yep.
What do you think about, or what's your thoughts of the whole policing and how it started and originated? I want to hear you guys' input on that. Travis, let me hear from you first.
Well, Robert, I told you this the other night that, I've never really looked into the origins of police, and I think a lot of people are in that boat that, I can't think of a time at all where that was talked about in school, or that there's even a class you could take. I've gone through a lot of college, and being an attorney is kind of part of the job, and I don't ever remember them offering a course, Origins of the Police Force.
Yeah, it was never taught.
It's an interesting thing, because if we don't know where it came from, how can we understand what it's doing or why it's doing what it's doing? As Kimberly talked about, clearly we have an incarceration issue because we have historic numbers in incarcerations, and that just
and it's not
good for anybody.
No, it's not just an incarceration issue, but it's how people are being treated.
Right.
If you're being treated like you're not a human being, that was the way that I felt like I was treated. Like I was just a dog. Like it was just the scum of the earth, and then you're sitting here in these shackles and clothes with these charges behind you. And then it starts to make a person literally take on that behavior, and I think that's another issue. Even when I was in prison, I worked as a Christian mentor, and you wouldn't believe the low self-esteems that people had because of the court system made them believe that they were animals, the justice system. And it went from the police officers to the prosecutors to the judges to the COs. And it was weird because, these people that were affected by this, they felt like they couldn't do anything right. They felt that it made them institutionalized. It was a really, really crazy and bizarre experience that I went through in that whole prison term. Not only was it, an eye-opener, but I felt like I was in another world, like another whole galaxy, and there was just no one that could understand or hear me other than the people that were in my position.
This kind of goes back to, what is the purpose of the prison system? Is it to rehabilitate or to punish? And what you're describing is 100% punishment. That's not going to make somebody change their ways. That's not going to build them up so that when they get out, they can be a contributing member of the society. It's simply going to tear them down to the point where they don't even feel like they fit into society anymore.
Correct.
And that's not good for anyone. It's not good for the person in prison. It's not good for the people in the rest of the society. Because what we need are more members of the society, more human beings, and less bad people in prison.
And this is why I get a joy out of communicating with people like you two. Kimberly Graham, this is why it's very appreciative of you to respond when I call you and I tell you, look, I'm having a show. I would like to have you come on and talk about this and you're always very knowledgeable. You bring your statistics, but this is important for our community to get involved now as we move forward into, not only our elections, but I mean, just our justice system as we get involved with this. I mean, we need a prosecutor. When you talk about prosecution, normally what comes into everyone's mind is mean, hateful. You're going to get the worst. Oh, terrible, jail, prison. There's no smiles. It's always frowns, and you can't even look at you in your face because it's like the system is designed for you to have to go to prison, and you're the bad person and you're the wrong person. I mean, how do we change this around and like I said, to make people feel like they're still human beings? They've made a mistake and they have to pay for it, and everybody's doing their job and this is just a job and we're sticking to it, but we have love in our hearts. I mean, where's the love at?
Right. And I've long said that you can, and I've seen a few rare judges do this. I've watched judges sentence people to prison, sentence my clients to prison in my career, and do it in a compassionate way, looking at that defendant, that person who's being sentenced to prison in the eye, speaking some words of compassion to them while they are sentencing them. It's not, it's not about, of course, it's not about, oh, let's just let everyone commit crimes and have an unsafe society. Of course not. We have to protect each other and make sure that nobody, is suffering from serious and violent crime to the extent we can. But as I've said earlier, there are so many other things that we have criminalized that are really poverty, addiction, and mental health that don't necessarily need to be criminalized. And in nations where they treat those things differently, they see far better and different results in their entire country and their entire in their communities. So I really think that a lot of these attitudes and how we treat defendants, it starts at the top, in my opinion. Who is, for example, the senior law enforcement official in a given county? It's the county attorney. And how that person talks about defendants and people that have been accused of a crime or convicted of a crime, it matters, and it can really help change the way that people are treated. And it's so important if we say, and I think we all, I don't know anyone that would disagree, that the goal, if someone has committed a crime, is, if they're able to be rehabilitated and put back on the right path and reintegrated into society and be a valuable, cherished, continue to be a valuable, cherished member of society who can positively contribute, and we want them to act like a kind, compassionate human being, then we need to treat them kindly and compassionately. People learn from how they are treated. Like our children, I have a 22-year-old son, he is thankfully a very kind, great young man, right? Very kind and compassionate and warm young man. I like to think at least a teensy tiny bit of that, is me and his dad and his grandparents and a lot of people. But because my son was always treated with respect, even if we disagreed with him, it wasn't like, well, just go to your room. It's because we would, I remember getting down on my knees when he was 3 years old and having a screaming fit and starting to whisper at him, Max, listen, tell me what's going on, and getting him to listen and engage with me and talk. And so, and you can respect a child and still disagree with them and still lovingly say, no, we're not going to have that candy bar now. And here's why. And they might not like it. But if you respectfully engage with them instead of, throwing the hammer at them, and saying no, and they don't know why, and they don't, just because you're bigger, you get to be that way. No. And I think that's, that's just the way that we all need to treat each other. My grandmother, when I was little, used to take me to the Methodist church with her. And, what I remember from that is that, Jesus taught kindness and Jesus taught love. And not that anybody has to be religious. I mean, this great thing about this country is we have freedom of religion and freedom from religion. You can be no religion or any religion, or, and that's one of the tenets of our country. But there's a lot we can learn from the parts of religions of the world that teach that compassion and kindness, no matter what religion. That's kind of the foundation of pretty much most of the major religions of the world. And if not that, it's just the foundation of being a decent human being.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned in to 89.3 KJMC, Des Moines, Iowa, capital city. And you're listening to the I.M.A.G.E show. And we've got Robert Pate, the host of the show, and we've got Kimberly Graham and Travis Schilling with us in the studio. And so we are talking about the criminal justice system. We're talking about things that go undetected, the war on drugs. Actually, I want to get more into the war on drugs right now. We haven't really dove into that.
That drives the majority of why we incarcerate so many more people than any other nation in the world. Most of those, I believe, huge percentage of those are drug offenses.
Yeah. And, I'll tell you what makes it crazy is that you talk about the war on drugs. Now, this was before methamphetamine. We're basically talking about crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm. That was Nixon in the 70s. Where it started.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. But the war on drugs, I think that was mainly directed toward crack cocaine, personally. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong or right?
I will preface this by saying I haven't researched this recently. I could be wrong on this, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think for a very long time, and I think this has been fixed, but I don't want to swear to that either. There were very different penalties, and the way the law treated crack versus powdered cocaine was different.
Right.
And the facts were that, at least at one point in history, I believe that it was more of a white demographic using the powdered cocaine and more of black and brown people using,
they've changed that. Mm-hmm. They've changed a lot of those laws.
Yes.
However, they still haven't changed the locking people up. The section codes, the enhancements, all those things are still there. So it's still available if you want to charge somebody under those, the war on drugs, RICO laws, all those other laws that were incorporated in the war on drugs to give people stiff punishments and do a lot of time in prison. They're still there. They haven't went away. Mm-hmm. Even to this day, there are still a lot of people getting a lot of time in prison, in federal court right here in Des Moines, Iowa. Mm-hmm. In state court with the violent crimes. You see a lot of attempted murders where the charges have been ranked up to attempted murder when it might have been something as simple as a burglary or something like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we've got to go to a quick break. We're running short on time. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. You're tuned in to the I.M.A.G.E show on 89.3 KJMC, and we'll be back after these messages. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, on the I.M.A.G.E show, and we're having some good conversation right now. We're talking about the war on drugs. And so, Travis, you had mentioned something that you wanted to kind of elaborate on, the war on drugs and the fact that it's not working.
Well, the war on drugs is an attempt to remove the supply chain, to remove drugs from society in a hope that that will lead to people not using drugs. But that hasn't seemed to work in, some 50 years that we've been trying it, since the 70s. And so what we need to do is cut off demand. That's the other way to get at this. And this is what I think Kimberly can talk about pretty good here, is how we can go about doing that.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to talk to that directly, exactly, because that's a huge topic that I don't think we have time for. I mean, cutting off demand means investing in our communities in a way that people don't feel compelled to use drugs to numb themselves out. We have so many, kids and adults in so much mental health trauma and emotional trauma, and our mental health system in this country is grossly underfunded, grossly understaffed. It's, if you even try to get in with a counselor, good luck. You might get in in one to see one 6 weeks to 2 months away. That's here right. In central Iowa. There's not enough of them. But the other thing that we can do that is one piece of this puzzle, I think, is to invest especially in our youth, because that's the future, right? Those are the people that are coming down the pike, right? Yes. And those are the people that we need to do everything in our power to keep on the path so that they don't end up in the adult prison system. There was a report that came out by the Sentencing Project about 2 months ago or so now that ranked all the states in relation to how bad the racial disparities are, in particular in juvenile justice, in the juvenile justice system. And Iowa ranked dead last. We have the worst racial disparities in the juvenile justice system of any state in the United States. Wow. And our own Iowa Department of Human Rights, Division of Criminal and Juvenile Justice Planning, came out with a report in November of last year, November of 2020, that's called, and you people can Google this and find this report online, I believe. It's called Racial Disparities, an Analysis of 3 Decision Points in Iowa's Juvenile Justice System. And it goes into a lot of detail about the differences. For example, here's just one statistic. In 2019, African American youth aged 10 to 17 were 6.5 times more likely to enter the juvenile justice system for a simple misdemeanor offense compared to white youth.
Is this in Iowa?
Yes, wow. This is only Iowa. This is only Iowa.
That's ridiculous.
It is, and so we're just, and that's for that's apples to apples. We're comparing simple misdemeanors here. African American youth are far more likely to be waived to adult court or to be direct filed in adult court. So we're sending kids to adult court, to adult prison, and then we're expecting somehow they're going to get their life, to your point about reentry, they're going to somehow go to adult prison at 15, 16, 17, whatever the age, if they've been waived. And some ages, you go direct to adult court and you have to be waived back to juvenile, and other ages you can waive up to adult court. So that's a side note. But we send kids whose brains, science tells us their amygdala, their prefrontal cortex is not even fully developed, that they aren't even capable of rationalizing and controlling impulses like somebody is who's 25, 28, 30 years old. Their brain is not even fully developed, and yet we are feeling just fine about sending them to adult prison or adult court. And that's something that again, county attorneys have the power to change. A county attorney can say, I'm not going to waive a child to adult court.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I'm so happy that we're having this conversation. We're having this talk. For those of you out there listening right now, whether you're riding in your car or you're at home, please take heed to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and, take action, get involved. I think that this topic was great. I want to thank you, Kimberly Graham, for coming on the show. I want to thank you, Travis Schilling, for coming on the show. As attorneys, you guys have gave us some real good input and some real good advice. And I really want to say thank you. I'm a little bit rusty because it's been a while since I've been in the studio on radio. I mean, but I'm very pleased with this show and the content.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much, guys. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to appreciate your time. We want to thank you for all your support. It is about that time for us to close right now. We want to say so long, and we will see you very soon on the I.M.A.G.E. Show, 89.3 KJMC, Des Moines, Iowa.